Hello, welcome everybody to Factory Berlin. You guys fill out the basement very, very nicely. What a handsome group. I'm just going to give you a few details about the evening. First of all, my name is Caleb Skrepnik. I am one of the community managers here at Factory. So if you're a member, likely you know me. If you're not a member, you should just become a member, then we could get to know each other. To give you a few details about Factory, how many of you guys actually are members? Just to get a feel for the room. Wow. A lot of people. All right, everybody else, I'm going to tell you really, really quickly what is Factory all about. Basically, our main bread and butter here is bringing people together who are working on things so they can make things together. That's it said very, very simply. We operate on a membership model, and the membership model basically contains three things. The first one is the network, so we have over 3,000 members by now. They come from all over tech, also outside of tech. We have some stand-up comedians, ex-museum directors, people from all over the place. Everybody is working on something. And so what we do here is basically try to give them as many opportunities as possible to get to know each other. So that can be events such as this one. We do 2 to 3 events every day. For any member tomorrow, we have a GFE event at 5:30 where there are free drinks and there are free donuts and nice people to get to know. So all members come to that, all non-members become a member. And we have this space and we have the Görlitzer Park space. So you can work there, you can have meetings, you can play ping pong, you can take a nap in the meditation room, as many people are fond of doing. And yeah, if you want to become a member, you can apply online. It's 50 euros a month. That is everything about Factory. Because we are about bringing people together, getting people talking to each other, as a tradition for every Fireside Chat, we have a 1-minute intro round, where, as the title might suggest, you have 1 minute to introduce yourself to your neighbor on your left or your right, or both. See how much talking you can get done in 1 minute. Tell the most interesting thing that happened to you today. You have 1 minute, and after 1 minute, I will magically bring your attention back to stage. So, 1 minute starting now. All right, that is about 1 minute. So, if everybody could wrap up and bring their attention back. Wow, you guys are a very, very orderly group. Well done on that. One last note about this evening is about Slido. I just found out a couple of minutes ago how Slido works, so this is kind of the blind leading the blind, but I will try to explain to you how it works. Basically, you can ask questions which will be asked after the talk this evening in the Q&A round, and you can do that on the platform. So you go to Slido, sly.do, and then on there you enter a code that's a bit difficult to read. It's E988. And so during the talk, you can ask your question, and you can also vote on other people's questions if you like their question, and then it's more likely to be asked, I suppose. And also, after the talk, there's going to be 1 minute where you can also ask a question. So please, if you have any questions burning on your mind, do so at Slido. I think that's all the points I needed to cover. So I'm going to move on to the next part of the evening and welcome Benedict and Dominik up to the stage. So a very warm round of applause for both.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. It's really nice to see so many faces tonight interested in cryptocurrency and the crypto space. With me, I have a very special guest tonight. He's a young entrepreneur who has been born and raised in Italy, and who turned, he started out as a Call of Duty hacker, who turned online marketer, and then turned tech founder before he started IOTA. Please have a warm welcome for Dominik Schiener.
Hey everyone.
The chairman of the IOTA Foundation. Dominik, you just came back from Singapore, right?
Yeah, today. So I'm a bit jet lagged.
So I just saw on your Twitter feed earlier that you've been to the Grand Prix. How was that?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. It was the first time. It's super loud, right? You have earplugs in. And after the fifth lap, it kind of gets boring. So really the start is cool.
I was a bit afraid if you could actually make it here, but it's really nice to have you here tonight. Then, so maybe we start out a little bit, because we only have like 25 minutes before we start with a Q&A session. Maybe start out a little bit with telling us a bit how you actually got to the point. Like how have been the different steps on your path to actually starting with the IOTA Foundation. So what kept your interest in the internet technology space?
So I was basically always a very curious kid, right? And so I always found new technologies and new things, and I wanted to dive deep to understand what they actually are. And then later on, I wanted to apply how I can actually do something with these technologies, right? Find these different opportunities. And so since an early age on, I was what we would call an online hustler, right? Really trying to figure out what to do, what the next opportunity for me is. I was never really stuck to an industry, because I was always able to just acquire the knowledge to figure out what to do in this industry. But it was always just hustling, right? And trying to figure out what the next opportunity could be. So that is why I initially started out with Call of Duty hacking, simply because it's an opportunity just to make money, right? Because everyone has to start somewhere from zero. And from there on, then I went on, for example, with online marketing, with SEO. And stuff like that. And then after that, I basically got introduced to cryptocurrencies, which obviously took over my life.
When was that? That was in 2014?
No, 2011. The first time. So then in 2012, I became full-time encompassed by cryptocurrencies. And then my first startup was in 2013 with 17, I think. Yeah.
Perfect. And then you started IOTA in 2015 with your...
So IOTA was started by 4 co-founders.
Right.
Me, David.
And you met online, you just told me? You met online?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're truly online business?
Digital, true and true, right? Yeah. And so we started IOTA in 2015. And should I say why we started IOTA?
Yeah, please.
So obviously because we've been in this space for so long, we obviously know the technology, what it does, how it works, and the limitations. And so in 2015, we realized we want to apply this amazing new technology to the Internet of Things, right? Because in the Internet of Things, you don't just want to automate the machines, you also want to make them autonomous, so they can make their own decisions, they can sell their own data, and so on and so forth, and they can create an entire network where they start paying each other and selling and buying resources. And for that, you always need a distributed ledger. And that's why we then went on this quest to kind of improve the distributed ledger, like the blockchain technology, which was on the market back then. And then we created the IOTA Tangle, which is no longer based on this blockchain, but is directed acyclic graph.
Okay. So yeah, I mean that's the true innovation of the core protocol, actually, right? So exactly. It's what you call the Tangle. It's basically a network data structure. It's a form of consensus algorithm. I think I hope most of you know what consensus itself is. Basically, the algorithmic infrastructure to create consensus in a distributed ledger system, and the way you did that was really innovative. Like you had, if I'm informed correctly, your co-founders had been doing scientific work before. So it's kind of like a technology that evolved, and then was basically founded and all put together in this concept and this idea of IOTA, which is a cryptocurrency, it's a foundation, and it's a digital ledger technology. Yeah. Maybe you tell the audience a bit more about why the Tangle itself is so innovative and how it differentiates from, or how it differs from classical blockchain technology. Yeah,
so maybe I just should take a different turn on this question. I think the main thing that we do differently than everyone else is first of all, the technology, right? This fundamental technology, which is no longer limited by miners and no longer limited by blocks, but it has a different way to achieve this consensus, like you said, in a more asynchronous way. And first of all, that is the main difference that we have from other projects. Then the second one is definitely our foundation approach, right? So we are the first ones to have a non-profit foundation in Germany, which was really quite thorough to set up. Took us more than a year. And with this foundation, we have a different purpose than other projects, right? Because everyone else is still in this hustling era, right? Where they mainly focus on making money and pumping the coins they're part of. And we are really more focused on the true fundamental adoption, because we are the people that ask these fundamental questions, like really, what is the purpose of a cryptocurrency? What is the purpose of a distributed ledger? And we are very direct and very honest people, as most of you can see on Twitter sometimes as well. And
we didn't want to talk about that.
Yeah, and we really convey this picture to the big corporates, which is why we're probably one of the top 3 projects when it comes to corporate adoption. Which is also our main focus here. Like everyone else, like all the Bitcoin crowd, and it was just always like, hey, fuck the banks, right? And we want to go against the establishment. But we think we need to work with the existing ecosystem in order for these fundamental technologies to actually have an impact on society. Because we can't be rebels all the time, right? We also have to work with the existing companies and make them realize what the advantages are and how to actually integrate it, right?
How do they deal with it? I mean, we often read about like large industry companies somehow cooperating with IOTA. Like just to name a few, like Bosch, for example, is working with you on a project on building sensor technology, as far as I know, and
Volkswagen
is working with you. So how do they approach this new field of distributed ledger technology? I mean, how do they just practically do they? Do they hire staff that deals with, starts working with you? Do they commit to your code base? Like, how does that work?
So where we're in right now is still we're in this early adoption phase, right? There is no product out there in the market yet, right? Nothing is production ready. So we're still in this early stage where we're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. So when we look at the big corporates, so obviously we have the CIO and we have the CDO. And right now everything is still under the CDO, right? The digital unit that is responsible for innovation. And most of the big companies have an innovation lab, right? So just on a side point, that is why there's not that many middle-sized companies participating in blockchain yet, because they don't have an innovation lab and don't have the resources to innovate and try and fail, right? And the big companies have those innovation labs, and usually they approach us or we approach them. And then you just explain the technology, how it can actually be applied to their business, what the business model could be with the new application. And then you just figure out if you want to work together. Obviously, most of the time it takes a long time for that to actually happen, mostly like 6 to 8 months for an actual proof of concept to be executed. And from there on, you start like nurturing the relationship with the big companies, right? And you go from a proof of concept to actually building a product like we're doing with Volkswagen now, who went from doing an over-the-air update proof of concept to now actually releasing a product next year.
So it feels a bit like classical like B2B sales cycles. Like
exactly.
It just takes long to...
Exactly, but the interesting thing here is like there's no sales, right?
Yeah, right,
and we don't charge fees, and so there's like adoption in that regard and convincing, basically.
Nice, interesting. Since we don't have much time, like you just said, you would also talk a bit, like to talk a bit about challenges. Like one of your selling points of the whole technology is scalability. And the ability of like feeless transactions for huge growth potential in the M2M space. Yeah. is there, like, theoretically, like if you look at the protocol, the theoretical parts of the protocol, there is an endless opportunity to scale transaction volume, right?
Not necessarily. But.
yeah. And what I really like about IOTA is that, in contrast to, for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum, which kind of always get to their TPS, like their transaction limits with adoption, for you it gets kind of better. Like the more nodes participating in your network, the more transactions you actually can perform. But the way you installed the technology at the moment is, you're running kind of a coordinator node, right, to make sure that certain attacks on early stage network are not growing. Could you explain this this functioning of the coordinator node, and could you explain how that fit in the general paradigm of decentralization, since like controlling like a central node is kind of the contrast? Like
so the interesting part. So first of all, like I said before, there is no protocol out there today that is production ready. Like I always say, Bitcoin is a proof of concept. Even though it's $110 billion, it's still a proof of concept, right? We don't know how far it will go, and we don't know what its true purpose is, and so on. We don't know all the attacks, right? And IOTA is also still a proof of concept, and so we still have to solve some fundamental technical challenges, like scalability in the sense of removing a coordinator. So blockchain technologies have scalability challenges, and IOTA has challenges now when it comes to the coordinator, right? And so why do we have a coordinator? The fundamental question, right? So think about launching the Bitcoin network today. It would be impossible, right? Because everyone would be able to attack it, right? There's GPU miners, there's ASICs, and as such, it would just be a race against each other because there would be no stable equilibrium in the network, right? Everyone would just attack each other and would be able to do a double spend attack. And as such, you would not be able to launch the Bitcoin network today. And like the same problem was with IOTA, right? Like how can you launch a IOTA network when an adversary has a majority of the computational capacity, right? They would be able to double spend and outpace the network. And as such, what we did is we introduced a coordinator, which is a node that basically helps in the validation of the transaction. So the consensus is still decentralized and distributed in the sense that one node verifies 2 transactions in a history, but a coordinator is there to assist in this validation. Basically say, hey network, look at this subtangle and validate it. So the validation still happens, and the coordinator cannot double spend, it cannot create new money. It's basically there to protect against DOS attacks, nothing else. And the same, many people don't know, many people that criticize us for the coordinator don't know this, but Bitcoin had a very similar mechanism up until 2012, 2013, where they utilized checkpoints. Basically, the core devs saying, hey, these blocks are valid, verify them. So the coordinator is basically there to help with the checkpointing in the validation.
But isn't the coordinator node sort of a single point of failure in this whole network? And couldn't that be contradicting adoption of the network in terms of, like, if you have a failure in the single node, like while you're adopting, like when you see adoption, you just lose trust in the peers which are using the network.
How do you define a single point of failure? Like, what is failure for you? A double spend, or is it not transactions not confirming?
It depends.
Right, if it's double spend, the coordinate is not a single point of failure, right? Yeah. And now when it comes to transaction confirmation, it's definitely a problem in that regard, right? But our hypothesis is decentralization is not the rule to everything, right? The Bitcoin crowd and other crowds want to decentralize everything at the cost. Want to decentralize everything at all costs, right? And we don't believe that, because right now, like I said before, we're still in this proof of concept phase, right? Nothing is production ready. So why should we decentralize the fully decentralize the network now already, when we are not ready, when we don't really know where this network is going? So now look at the Bitcoin and Ethereum networks, where they then had the splits of the entire networks, right? And we come into this stage with the hypothesis that we, as a foundation, know best how to further develop the protocol, which is also why we run the coordinator. And why with this coordinator we can adapt the protocol faster, we can fix bugs faster, and basically be on this path to make the protocol actually production ready, and then remove the coordinator. And obviously removing a coordinator is one of the biggest tasks of our foundation right now, of our research team. And yeah.
When do you expect to remove it? Is there like a timeline or something?
There's
or
no
is
timeline.
it like trial and error basically?
So there's no timeline, but by the end of the year, we're definitely going to propose to the community what these 2 different solutions might be to remove the coordinator. So the cool name is called Coordicide, right? Coordinator suicide. So that's cool name dropping, right?
Awesome.
But it's also a big task, right? Yeah. And we were not perfect, and we have big technical challenges, we have big adoption challenges, but that's what keeps us alive, right?
Yep.
This is exciting.
What are the like besides like delivering like a production ready protocol basically, like which kind of like is stable 1.0 or something?
Yeah.
On this path, like which other challenges do you face? Like, what's the most important challenges from your perspective?
In my opinion, it's definitely adoption, right? So we have this debate of permissioned versus permissionless distributed ledgers, right? So permission distributed ledgers don't have a fundamental cryptocurrency, and you run them in a contained network, right? And so not everyone can participate. And we are firm believers that only permissionless distributed ledgers make fundamental sense, because only they actually enable this permissionless innovation and these ecosystems where I can participate with my Raspberry Pi in this machine economy, right? And so we are firm believers in that. And the difficulty is obviously the corporate world sometimes thinks very differently, because they still want you to hold their hands. They want to have a private network where they can do access control and everything, right? And as such, Hyperledger and those other projects obviously also taking the lead in adoption. And now we obviously have the challenge that we need to convince a big company to actually utilize this open network, where many say, oh, like, what about the security of it, right? And so there's this big educational challenge that has to be done, but then there's also a big challenge when it comes to the adoption of the cryptocurrency, right? Because you want to have a big company utilize your cryptocurrency for charging or whatnot. And so there, the challenges are obviously volatility, because it's fluctuating every day, 5-10%, right? And you don't want to have that in your car, such a wallet. And then obviously also integration, because you need to be able to get your existing normal money, euros and dollars, into the new ecosystem, right? And so there you need to have these gateways.
Yep.
And just so you know, that's why I personally believe that banks are going to be a key component to the adoption of cryptocurrencies, because they're like the gateway. Think about the internet adoption of the early 90s, right? So there you have the ISPs, the internet service providers. They're like the gateways. Right, and the ISPs initially were really worried that, oh, like what about our business model of sending SMS and stuff, right? And now it's a completely new business for them, just providing internet infrastructure, right? And so the same is going to be true for cryptocurrencies, where banks now have a completely new business model, where they're going to be the gateways for in and out of these ecosystems. And those adoption problems are going to be huge. And then obviously leaving that aside, organizational, right? In 2017, all of those organizations grew from 5 people to 100 people all of a sudden, right? And suddenly you have pure chaos, right? Nothing gets done, right? And you don't even know that nothing gets done. So you need to completely reset your assumptions of where you stand with the team, and just like rebuild it and restructure it, and actually introduce titles, right? All startups always think you don't need titles, but you kind of need them just to have structure in place. And then most important for all of these cryptocurrencies is the foundation component, right? Everyone raised hundreds of millions of dollars in their ICOs. And most of them pay themselves a ton of money, and now they're starting to run out of money. All right, so you need to have a business model behind your foundation to actually be sustainable. Because you talk about single point of failures, right? So the coordinator is not a single point of failure, but the foundations are a single point of failure. Because if they run out of money, they can't pay their employees anymore, and you can't further develop the protocol. And so we as a foundation really think thoroughly about what kind of new revenue streams we can actually have to be sustainable. And that's one of our big goals, to be sustainable.
How much are you focused on building a developer community? I mean, in contrast to, let's take Ethereum. I mean, they're one of their primary focuses is building like a complete ecosystem for developers. Like, I mean, that's why they invented the idea of smart contracts to and providing Solidity development language, and they basically try to provide the environment for getting interested developers, like who are interested in doing something with blockchain and adapt it into different using different industries to start developing and building their own projects within this ecosystem.
So everything is open source, right? So it's easy to copy a technology. It's impossible to copy an ecosystem that is well set up, where you have committed people. And so over the last few years, we were really focused on setting up an ecosystem where people actually develop without us like pushing them, right? You want to have people, you want to have basically this cycle where someone just goes on GitHub, they read the documentation of your software, they install it, they read the libraries, the documentation, then they start building, right? They start creating. And you want to have such an ecosystem because only then it's permissionless, right? It's an open ecosystem where anyone is participating, actually contributing. And that's what we really want to achieve. And I think we've done a really good job in that, especially in the last few months where we've seen so many cool projects pop up in the community. Like people just building a Tangle visualizer. And stuff like
What's
that.
your favorite project? Is that a visualizer?
I can't say that. No, I like many of the projects.
Okay.
And what we have to do as a foundation, we have to provide the framework, right? The way that we do that and what we focus on right now is really documentation, which is the most important component, right? Because if your documentation is not that good, people get frustrated. And I know how frustrated I got initially with Ethereum, like writing Solidity code. I was like, I'm not going to swear again. So documentation and also nurturing the ecosystem, right? So we have an ecosystem fund with like $20 to $30 million right now. I don't know the token price, so like big ballpark. And the ecosystem fund where we actually give to the community grants, right? It's free money, no strings attached. And obviously we are part of the community because, like I said, these cryptocurrency projects are ecosystems. They're not foundations. And ecosystem is foundation, community, and also big corporates building products and startups obviously building products.
And what about the concept of smart contracts? I think your co-chair Ralf Ronman, right?
Yeah.
In May he said something like you're working on a smart contract layer. It's not part of the core protocol, but it's going to be something that's put on top. How far did you get with that? Like, is that something you do like internally, or do you have like teams, external teams?
So right now it's an internal project. It's called Cubic, and Cubic is definitely a high priority for IOTA because when it comes to machine economy, you need three components, right? You need micropayments, frictionless micropayments with no transaction fees. You need identity, right, for machine identities, and you need automated contracts. And we're working on all three. And Cubic is definitely high priority, and we hope to have an alpha ready by the end of the year. And so we are right now scaling up the team and hiring a lot. So if talented people want to apply, we're going to open more job openings. But yeah, Cubic right now is still in the research and early development phase. And now we're starting to scale it up with the development.
Cool. I think one of the challenges could also be, or like this is my personal perspective, will be like interoperability between different consensus mechanisms, different projects, different kind of like ecosystems. There's interesting projects like Polkadot, trying to approach that, like different Asian projects trying to do that. How important is that for IOTA, and how are you approaching that?
So interoperability is definitely huge for us as well, and we actually want to start some projects soon on interoperability. Because like I said before, we have this permissioned versus permissionless component, and quite honestly, right now, if you speak with a big company, you don't really know when should I use a permission chain, when should I use a permissionless chain, right? So what you should do is you just test, right? Just do some trials. And for example, one thing that I would be very excited to do is, like, for example, with Hyperledger, you utilize Hyperledger for trade finance. So we have a bank consortium which runs a Hyperledger network, but you utilize IOTA for the chain of custody of the good, right? So what you can do then is you can track good with an IoT sensor, and the data then gets submitted to the Hyperledger chain, and then it automatically makes a decision, right? And for example, it will release a letter of credit. Or something like that. And there you can have these different interactions, and you mainly just want to do this to figure out what works and what doesn't, right? And in the future, there's not going to be one chain to rule them all, right? It's going to be multiple protocols, multiple networks that have to work together in order to build these products for the future.
Very interesting. Thanks. Before we start with the Q&A session, I have a couple small questions.
Okay.
On the current market situation. I think now we've been talking a lot about technological stuff.
Oh, you want to speculate?
Yeah, like everyone. I think there's some guys in the crowd who are interested in that. How often do you check your portfolio daily?
Never.
Never.
I'm pretty maximalist.
You sure?
Yeah.
Cool.
Like I only hold IOTAs for the last 2 years or so.
Which are like non-IOTA projects out there which you think are really interesting? Like where you say like this, it's a good foundation, it's a great technology, it's a great team.
Cryptocurrency?
Or cryptocurrency or general like token-based projects? Or
I guess Stellar is doing a good job with adoption. I'm not saying that the technology is good, but I'm pretty impressed that I'm convincing IBM. So.
And what do you think about the current market situation? I mean, everyone was excited in January.
I mean, the hype was insane. Like for someone being in the inside it was absolutely insane, right? And now it's starting to normalize more, and I hope that the productivity has increased over the last few months. That projects actually focus on getting shit done than just focusing on the price, right? So I think that's a good thing. And most of the speculators got pushed out that we're just in this to make the money, right? Because as soon as your taxi driver knows who you are and asks you about your project, you know that shit is going to go down, right? And so now it's starting to normalize more, and those speculators that were just interested in making money are now pushed out. Because as a founder, I don't want to have a community where people just rant all the time. Hey, when is the next announcement? When does the price go up and stuff like that? Right? I want to have an ecosystem where people build shit, right? And that's where we are right now. And so I'm really happy that we actually evolved and matured as an ecosystem. And I definitely think that the market will start catching up again. Like I just came from Singapore from a private event, blockchain event, and this was always a big topic. And the exchanges are getting regulated, the banks are getting interested, institutional investors are getting involved, so it's definitely maturing more as an ecosystem. So it's not just random hustlers, right, but it's really more traditional VCs and investors getting involved, which is what we want, right? It takes time, people are impatient, I know. But it's getting there, I think. Yeah. But one thing to realize is that you're never gonna see the same price increases like 2017, where a project just jumps 1,000% over 1 week or something, right? So it's gonna be more traditional.
Wonderful. Last question? What's your guess on the total market cap end of 2019?
Total market cap end of 2019?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, 18, 19, next year, end of next year.
Like, what's the market cap right now?
200 billion? Something like that?
I don't know, maybe 350?
Okay. So you don't care?
I'm pretty conservative. I don't think it's going to go more than 2x.
No. Okay, I agree. I mean, it's about, in that moment, I agree. I truly believe that there has been happening a lot.
Like, I'm going to be happy if it stays. Let's put it like that.
There's been happening a lot within the last month in technology development of communities. So I agree. There's lots to see. There's lots to come up.
The main thing that we're going to see is that, like I said before, those ICO projects are going to fall out of the market, and it's more going to be focused on protocol layers than application layers, and so that's going to be beneficial for us and the other projects, right? Because and many of these projects are going to run out of money as well. So that will be an interesting development in this year as well, because it will always be negative for the market, for reputation, because people lose money.
Wonderful. So Dom, thank you very much for this great chat.
Thank you.
You now have the chance, I think we do again 1 or 2 minutes where you can ask questions on this Slido tool.
Did we go over
You can use this code if you didn't log in already, and then just vote the best questions, and we'll try to read it out, and Dominik is going to answer it.
Like when code? What does that mean?
I have that here. Wait. So let's read the troll box first.
Like those are
okay, there's one. That's simple. So that got the most likes.
Yeah, there was a good question at the top.
How far?
No, not that one.
Well, but that's... So you just want to troll a little bit.
Yeah, like that one is actually good. Most strategic choice you've made, and which one the most?
Look, I'm the moderator. We start on from top.
Are you the moderator?
Down, okay.
Okay.
So could you scroll up again, please? I didn't even read the question. So how far in timeline is the dev team concerning the shutdown of the coordinators since local snapshots are close in reach? Yeah.
So there's obviously multiple components to removing the coordinator, and local snapshots is an important one, so that the network can actually run on its own. So we no longer need to do the coordinator snapshots. So that's good, and snapshots is going to come soon. Difficult response, but we're like coordinator is early research, right?
But could you quantify that in terms of like transactions per second? Could you say like we're definitely done with the coordinator if we have reached 1,500?
Like you can't quantify that easily because there's like no security framework, right? You don't know how big your adversary is and so on and so forth. So you can't just say 1,000 transactions per second, we can shut it off. Because it's more complicated because you also need to have this transition phase, right? Yeah. Transition the old network to the new network. And so what we are doing now is obviously the coordinator is there to remove the coordinator from the current code base and then launch a new network without a coordinator, then it's just see what happens.
Perfect.
And then attack it.
Second one, is it possible to compress crane size with IOTA?
This one is probably from Kneipe.
Is that serious?
I know the inside joke.
Okay.
Shout out to Kneipe.
That's okay, that's a good one. So next one from Edgar. Looking back, what was the most successful strategic choice you've made and which one the most disastrous that you regret?
Disastrous, probably Microsoft debacle was one of those. That was the most disastrous. But it was like not on our side, it was like also on their side, but it wasn't a good thing, right? Because it haunted us back and then like all of the fraudsters and the enemies were just always saying, oh, you know, it's a partnership with Microsoft. Well, we didn't, right? But that kind of sucked. But the most successful strategic choice, let me think.
Skipping online marketing.
Skipping online marketing. Yeah, like exactly. Like no longer following the hype train, right? Yep. And just focusing on restructuring the business. Like I always say that the best thing that happened to us was the price crashing, right? Because you're no longer delusional. You're no longer just stuck in like new announcements, right? You actually focus on shit like we're not shipping products, right? And our purpose is to ship products, not to increase the price, right? So that kind of gave us a reset. So that was good. But it didn't cause the market crash, so it was not its choice.
There's another quite broader one. What are the future plans for IOTA in terms of disruption?
But that's kind of a broad question, right?
So you can come up with whatever you want.
Well, obviously digital identities, I think, is a big one. We as a foundation really want to solve the identity problem as well. So we are starting to do more projects there. So not just machines, but also humans, right? So we as a foundation, we also want to kind of move away from just doing IoT, but also like really doing more humanitarian work, I would say.
And I think just to add, like my thought, I think one of the most disruptive things actually is that that you build a technology that when you have a growing network, you have more support for more transactions.
Yep.
So in the architecture, you build you solve the scalability problem.
Yep. Exactly.
So I mean, you have different problems with coordinator nodes and stuff. So
they need to solve the adoption.
Sure. What do you see the most viable early use cases for IOTA that drive broader adoption?
So verifiable claims is a big one. Where you, for example, put data in the tag, and then you can have other people verify this data, like, for example, in supply chain, where you can verify where the good has been in the supply chain, or a document which you signed. That's a big one. And then that's also what, for example, Volkswagen is working on for next year with their project. And then, obviously, I also think that Cubic is going to be a big one. For use case for IOTA, where the token will be utilized for the payment for each computation cycle, right? So we want to focus more on token use cases as well.
So Cubic was actually there before IOTA, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of like a historic project.
It's a brainchild of Come From Beyond, Sergey Vanchego. Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. Well, okay, that's one probably.
Like, is there a lot of trolling?
How do you feel personally, and especially with the conflicts in the IOTA Foundation and the huge organization issues? I mean, it's probably referring to the early August.
Yeah, exactly.
PR.
So IOTA, it goes through the same growth phases as every other startup, right? And so the early founders who are obviously close friends always sometimes have different ideas on how to move forward. And the difference between IOTA and the traditional startup is that we grew from 5 people to 90 people within 6 months, and we are a project with billions of dollars in value, right, in the ecosystem. So obviously, like there's a lot of infighting that can happen. And right now, we obviously resolve those issues, and the foundation is running better than ever before. And everyone is more convinced than ever that it will move forward well. Why did you just raise your hand?
Yeah.
Oh. I shouldn't call you out in front of the crowd, right?
Greetings from Leverkusen. Awesome. That's funny. Gibt's einen Livestream? Yes. Is Mats Hop wach? I don't know.
Who's Mats Hop?
I don't know. That's a funny too.
Oh, that's a good question.
Which one?
Competitor.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, you can just answer. Okay, who do you consider as your main competitor and why? That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, like that's a tough one actually. So obviously, permission blockchains are sort of competition, but then I would also say that Visa and Mastercard are kind of the competition in the traditional market, because obviously, like when they go into IoT, they can also convince a big company to adopt their existing payment system. So we have to convince those big companies to utilize a completely new payment system. For obvious reasons, because of the network effects, and that they don't need to invest big in infrastructure and so on and so forth.
What do you think? I wanted to ask that before, but it didn't have time to type it into the tool. What do you think about Hashgraph?
Hashgraph, it's marketed very well.
Yes.
They make cool GIFs. But other than that, I think it's an interesting approach. But it's permissioned.
But no one actually knows exactly how it works, right?
like I don't know how it works either, but they also have security challenges and technical challenges that they have to overcome. So it's not like a silver bullet in that regard. It's still in its early stages as well. And I don't understand why they did an ICO and now have a cryptocurrency. But other than that, I think it's interesting. But I don't really see them as competition. Yeah.
Satoshi asks you when moon.
I don't know, man.
Answer that.
You should go to speculation and ask there. What happened to your hand? I knew this question would come. That's going to stay a secret. You can speculate.
When does it start? Well, if you know what the MBUG is, then maybe you can answer that one.
Wait, MBUG?
I don't know what the MBUG is. There's probably more than just one MBUG.
Is that the undocumented workaround?
Maybe a security bug. It's still not fixed. It's just a workaround.
Okay, now it's getting serious.
The workaround? Oh, that one. I think that will be fixed by the end of the year, because we have Cybercrypt working on that right now. Yeah. But basically what we're working on right now is the final design sort of IOTA, which also means the signature scheme, which is being reworked right now, the hash function, curl, which is being reworked right now, and the protocol structure of the transaction structure. That is like the big work right now of the foundation.
So there will be a huge change in how transaction will be handled.
Not a huge change, but there will be changes. Like the protocol as it stands right now will not be the final protocol, obviously, right? Same as in Ethereum and Bitcoin, we overgo these changes, right, to improve the technology. But we don't know yet right now how it will change, right? But it will change. For the better. So,
that one is interesting. What do you think about decentralized oracles and Chainlink? I mean, Chainlink.
I don't know Chainlink. Decentralized oracles, that's basically Cubic, so I'm a big fan. And Chainlink, I don't know Chainlink, but basically oracles are a big component of distributed ledger ecosystems because you need an oracle to interface with the real world, right? And also to validate data from the real world. So without oracles, they can't really work.
Yeah, that's a simple one. Oh, sorry, bring it up again. Can we bring up the last question again? Like, who of the founders? Oh my God.
You have to scroll down.
It's complicated.
Wow, that's a lot of questions.
When Lambo.
Venezuela, cuando ilegal IOTA Latina America.
Asks you.
That's probably terrible Spanish.
Who of the founders is mostly investing time in developing, and who is therefore doing other stuff these days? Are you still developing?
So Sergey Ivancheglo is obviously developing the most because he's also involved in other stuff in the foundation, including Cubic. And Sergey Popov is obviously doing research most of the time. Like he still writes a lot of papers and works obviously full time. I'm focused on operational work and always strategic, same as David. I try to code more. It's kind of fun, but I don't have enough time, sadly. But I want to learn Python 3 again.
There's another question. Is Lightning Network, so the solution for the blockchain-based currencies, killing the Tangle?
Sorry?
Is it killing the Tangle?
Killing the Tangle? No, like Lightning networks are not a competition to us. Right. Because layer 2 scalability solutions are just like an inefficient DAG, right? Yeah. And so you always have these big problems with transaction fees because you have to pay for the routing. And you also have big scalability issues because you don't even know if there's a route for you. Like I don't even know if I can send payments to you. And as such, it's hugely inefficient for the Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. And it's still in early stages of development, and we can't even speak about adoption yet, right? So I'm not worried.
Someone's asking why Berlin, and you just told me you have an office here at the WeWork space.
No. What the hell is the point of the MCMC algorithm for tip selection? Why not compute the distribution of tips and select randomly? Like read a blog. Like it's all written on the blog. So the main reason why you should not choose it randomly is because the growth of the tangle will be inefficient, right? And the MCMC algorithm is also one of the security components of the tangle. And as such, you cannot just choose the transactions randomly because then the growth will not be efficient and it will also not be secure, which is why the MCMC algorithm is such a key component of IOTA. Like if you read the white paper, it's complicated, right? And if you read our blog, Alon Gal, our current head of research, wrote a blog on exactly this topic. And he also wrote a simulator, so you can try it out yourself. You should. Sorry?
Alpha is set to 0.001 in the reference implementation, so it's basically random selection of the tips.
In the white paper?
No, in the reference implementation Java code.
But we don't use MCMC right now there, right? We use a different algorithm there.
Where, in the Java implementation?
Like, I don't know. I don't know that question, actually. you should ask the developer. No, but that's why we have the coordinator. But snapshot is complete. Thanks for the update. So why
didn't the verifiable claim team won?
I don't know which hackathon.
I don't know. Any other new questions?
Like, are there audience questions?
Yeah, that's simpler for our next.
Yeah, like so our next don't get hurt, right?
Yes, please.
You mentioned pumping.
Just wait a second. You get a microphone. There you go.
Yeah, you mentioned the problem of pumping cryptocurrencies, and it's been said that some of these leading cryptocurrency platforms, if normal securities laws applied, the owners would actually be in jail for market manipulation. And just interested what your thoughts are on that as a problem.
So I definitely think market manipulation is the biggest problem that we have in crypto today, right? It's too easy to manipulate the markets, and we have seriously suffered from that from the early days on. As soon as we were listed on Bitfinex, right? As soon as we posted an announcement, the price went down, right? It's kind of frustrating as a founder. And the thing about those other projects is that they all work together, right? The exchanges with the founders of the cryptocurrencies, so it's all coordinated. I do think people will go to jail. I don't think everyone will serve justice, but it's just part of the game, right? Every new market has goods and bads, right? But we have to make sure that the bads don't overtake the goods. And we are not manipulating, don't worry. Any other questions?
There's one. Oh, it's getting technical.
So, since IOTA's also on the name focused on IoT, I ask myself, why do we need the community to have something, a core functionality like a library for the actual IoT, instead of having some library provided by the foundation? I mean, there's still no suitable library for little devices like the STM32 or something. It's just, okay, we have here an IoT device, the Raspberry Pi, but actually the Raspberry Pi is more like a real computer instead of, that's not IoT. So.
But your question is why we don't develop the library for your device. We're busy, man.
Yeah, but since IOTA is
but this is a fundamental question, right? So what is the purpose of the foundation? And in my opinion, the purpose of the foundation is not to write all of the libraries. We should write a specification, right? So that someone can then make a library, which is why we rather focus on supporting the ecosystem so that the community can help develop it. And then we can basically give the stamp of approval and say, like, this is approved, right? This is legit. But we can't develop the libraries for everything simply because we don't have the capacity for it. So we should rather focus on providing the blueprints than providing all of the code, because it takes a lot of effort, right? And the foundation is not going to have 200, 300 employees. We're going to reach a point where we no longer need more people to execute our vision, right?
So basically, what you're telling me now is IoT is not our focus, so we develop other stuff, but not IoT, even if we say it is.
No, like right now we have a C client that we're working on. Maybe
but it's not suitable for the IoT. It's implementing HTTP and all that stuff, which basically needs in Linux or something operational system. I'm talking about devices where an operation system is actually way too much already, because this device has just a few kilobytes of memory.
Right, so what do you expect to do with that device? Because first of all, that device is not going to run a full node, right? So
no, but a light wallet, it must at least be able to create from its own seeds, sub-seeds, and utilize the private keys of the sub-seeds and then create a signature.
But that would not be difficult to implement at all. Like we already have this working on the ESP32, right? And stuff like that. And so in my opinion, we are very much focused on IoT, but just because we don't work on your device doesn't mean that we don't work on IoT. But like in my opinion, this wouldn't be hard to implement, right? It's just a signing scheme, and that's it.
But the mbug is another problem.
But why is the mbug another problem here?
Because you need to hash it several times until you reach the point that
I get it,
this.
Just wait.
I think
soon.
Yeah, I think as Dom already said, like it's early days, and
I mean, if you want to develop it, just apply it to the ecosystem fund, and we can support it through that.
Perfect.
But that goes to everyone that wants to develop, right? So we want to have an inclusive and open ecosystem. So if you want to develop something, just apply to the ecosystem fund and be part of the ecosystem.
Perfect.
Cool, thank you.
There was one question. I think there was. Oh, sorry. One.
At first, I like what you do. Keep up the great work, Dom. Really nice. There was a question: is it your birthday today, or?
No.
Okay. Forget this question. Another question from me. What do you think about...
I should have said yes.
Yeah.
Fuck.
What do you think about proof of work as a service? There's a site called PoServer.io. What do you think? Is it a chance for IOTA? Is it a risk for IOTA? What do you think?
So that's a good question. So in my opinion, right now it's a very interesting solution to some of the problems that makes usability easier, right? So when it comes to actual attacks and stuff like that in a network, that is still something that we are then further advancing, right? Right now with the coordinator, we don't really have an acute problem. But in the future, the way that we envision this, like this is basically IoT, right? The way that we envision this is that the machine that doesn't have enough computational capacity outsources this to another machine, right? And then they just pay it for it. And as such, even though other people just, like there was some Twitter rants recently, and even though they say, oh, like it's centralizing or whatever, right? Like this is part of our vision, right? Because we want to have a tiny sensor in IT be able to talk with the fog computing station, and the fog computing station, which has an FPGA, then does the computation, right? So I'm not worried. I think it's a cool project, and I like it.
Thank you.
Perfect. One last question. Anyone? I think there was one before. It's gone.
Yeah.
Perfect. Then, thank you very much. Dominik?
Okay. So should we go?
Good luck with the project. All the best. And I think we're still open for beers for about an hour, so everyone can chat with everyone about blockchain in Tango. Have fun. Thank you.